Hey guys, Kyle here, and today I have a very simple but also complicated-ish cool data pack for you guys. So this was suggested by King Blue on my Discord, and he wanted me to update my mob health display, so here it is. It's an updated version of the mob health display bar, so when I hit this guy, he will not lose his health because I don't have the pack installed. So I'm going to go through the steps to install this pack. I will show you how, it basically just, like, if you're a player that wants to use this in some kind of a combination with other packs and you just want this thing to just work on everything, then this is the version for you. So there will be two versions in the download. There is what I labeled as the survivalist and the dev version. So the survivalist version is the version for anybody that just wants to throw this pack into their data packs folder and just go, and it just works and it does what you intend it to do, as in it displays the mob's health for all of the applicable mobs. I did do some specificity so that arrows don't show their health. Obviously that wouldn't make sense. And yeah, it just runs, it just works. But then there's also a dev mode which only runs it on specifically tagged mobs, and this would be something more applicable to people that are working on a specific, they want to use it and kind of mold it. It's maybe some kind of a map. But for if you're making this and you want to use this in some kind of survival aspect, even with custom mobs that are spawning in survival, this will work. So I'll show you all of its capabilities right after we install it. So to install it, go ahead and go to the data packs folder of the world you want to install it in. Take the survival mode data pack, drag it in there, and then just simply type reload. Once you type reload, it'll tell you that it was installed, and it will tell you a little message here, say click here to stop sending this message. So every time you reload, it will tell you this message, and if you click here, it will stop telling you that message. Okay, so now really quickly, if you ever want to uninstall this thing at any time, just do /function cw_hp uninstall, and you just run that, and it will uninstall the data pack, and then you can remove the data pack, you can delete it. But if you type reload again, then it'll reinstall and you're back where you started. Okay, so this pack is pretty straightforward. I put the chicken down and it shows the chicken's HP out of how much HP he has left. And bright red is the number of hearts health he has, and dark red is the maximum he could have. So there you go. Works pretty simple. So then, yeah, it works with any mob. It'll say the proper amount, but it will not do it to things like items. So there is a list of excluded entity types that I make sure it doesn't use, and I went through every entity in the game to make sure that it excluded the ones that you wouldn't want a HP bar showing as the name. For example, a wither that already has a mob boss bar, so why would you have one above its name? So then another thing is this works with custom named mobs. So if I take a there's a lot of ways to do this. I think this will, let me just do this and then do name tag. I think if I rename this to, it will just do it, right? Yeah, there you go. That actually does work. So if he's named AAAA, then it will say 20 out of 20 for AAAA instead of just 20 out of 20. So it'll tell you the health as well as maintaining the original name. And if I put another one of these guys down with a name of BBBB, he will have BBBB, and he will have AAA, and he will still have AAA, and he will still have BBBB. And we will get in later in this video. I will cover exactly how it works and how it's able to do that magic. In the previous version of this, it needed items like boots on the mob. This has a much more sophisticated solution, but for those of you who just want to use this in survival and want it to work, there you go. It's done. It works. Honestly, me demonstrating this wasn't really necessary, because if you downloaded it properly and you followed those steps, it works. It just does. It was made in 1.17. It will not work in versions before 1.17, but it will work if you just edit the exclusions list, which I will show later in this video. There is a exclusions list which contains some mobs from 1.17 in the list, and you will have to delete those in order for the exclusion list to work. Otherwise, it might include those mobs, but it'll probably be fine just based off the way I coded it. So you can probably throw this into anything up to 1.15. So 1.15, 1.16, 1.17, and the types of commands I'm using in this data pack probably won't be changed for many updates to come. So probably will work in 1.18, 19, 20, and so forth, because they're very core essential commands, but if they do, let me know in the comments if it doesn't work, and I'll try and update it as soon as possible. So yeah, that's it. Now, if you are here for the dev mode is a slightly different data pack. That is the disp dev. So let me go ahead and do data pack disable that one, and enable devs. All right, so devs is enabled now. I can delete this guy. So the devs data pack is the same data pack, but it has a slight difference in that if I type reload, and now it will not work, but it will work if I do, let me do /tag add disp underscore HP. So if I give that tag, then now it will work. He's named BBB. So the reason I wanted a dev mode is because you might want even further control over what exactly is getting this display. So this will give you that control by giving a tag to the mobs or putting it on them when they spawn. In addition to that, it's set up this mode, this pack, the zip, you cannot just drag into your data packs. You have to unzip it and make sure that it is not a folder in a folder. That happens a lot. A lot of times people will say, click on it, and then the first thing they see is not data, but they see another folder that has the same name. It just depends on your archiver, but I made it that way because there is a potential that it would explode all of the other folders for other archivers. So this is the safest way for me to make it accessible to people. Anyways, so I will just go into briefly how it works. So if I go into tags, there is a entity tag of all of the exempt entities. These are entities it will not operate on. So yeah, these are ones that it will not operate on. Then if I go into the functions, then I go into the main, you can see here, in the dev mode, in the survivalist mode, it uses the exempt type to specify which one to use. In the dev mode, it checks for a tag. So in the dev mode, it checks if something with the tag has not been set up, then basically set it up. And then if something with the tag gets hit, it will have a hurt time MBT. That hurt time MBT will indicate that it was hit, and it will run the hurt function. The hurt function will check if this thing has been set up before, and it'll set it up. It's just one command. And then the other thing it does is it goes through all this other complicated stuff. So one of the challenges is maintaining the original name of the mob before you added the health bar, because once you combine the health numbers with the name, those things are inexplicably linked together. You cannot split them up without doing some weird stuff that is just not worth it. So you have to remember the original name somewhere. Where did I remember it? In a data storage. How do you access data storage? Not so easy. So when the mob is set up, it saves it to a data storage using set data. Set data actually, basically, it goes off of an ID system. So if the mob has an ID score of 20, then it's going to be saved in the data storage location of 20. So let me show you the data storage. So the data storage looks like this. It's a bunch of empty elements. There's actually 512 of them. So the data storage has 512 elements, which means this supports 512 mob names synchronously at the same time. So what that means is because of the way I have set up the ID system, when it reaches 512, it loops back to 0, and it also has extra commands here to make sure that you're not duplicating. So let's say a mob was spawned, it has ID of 0. Then 512 mobs spawn additionally to that, and then the next one spawns, and it also somehow ends up with the ID of 0. It wants to have the ID of 0 because you've looped, right? So now that they have the same ID of 0, that would be a problem, right? They would overwrite each other's names, the other one's name. So the old mob would have the new mob's name. But what this does is it has a few logic here, a little bit of logic here, to basically say skip over it if, and this is what this command does, if there is an entity that already has the ID. So there's some skip over logic, but that logic and stuff only runs the first time when a mob is set up. So that's not too bad. So then the actual load, if you want to talk about the load of this, is the thing that you're going to be doing a lot of is get data. And what is get data? It just copies a score and it checks, is this fake player score between 0 and 64? That's not a very expensive command, 0 and 64. It's just a score check. Then it checks, is it between 0 and 8? That's not an expensive command. It just checks 0 and 8. And then it checks, is it 0? Oh, if it's 0, then do the data modify. That's a little expensive, is the data modify. It's not too bad because it's data modify storage, but it's check score data modify storage. That's pretty cheap. And then it runs 8 of those, but if they're not true, then it's just a score check. So what you end up with is about 12 score checks. No, it's going to be a couple extra score checks because it also has to run the score checks here. They just show up as false. So what this ends up being when I run it is 34 commands when you run the hurt function at a mob, because that's after branching. And it'll be a consistent 34 commands always. So that's the great thing about this tree system, is you're going to have a consistent amount of commands that it takes to do a certain thing. Now, if you're wondering how I set up this tree, because that would take forever, I went to my favorite website, just kidding, but it is my website, cloudwolf.github.io, and then I went to the scoreboard trees, and then I realized it did not work for branches of 8, so then I went into my source code, and I fixed it, and I updated the website, so you can go to the website and change the branch number, and you can change the endpoint, and you can change the start point, and it all works now. So I implemented it. I have a video tutorial. You can click on this link. It actually is up, and it's still pretty valid for how it works. It's just slightly different with the, instead of number of elements, it just says endpoint. But anyways, so I fixed this guy. The reason I needed to was because a branch size of 8 is actually the optimal kind of ratio that a few people have tested in the past. So I just go with it as convention. But I've other people like RX have tested the optimal ratio between function calls and scoreboard tests, and 8 is a pretty good number in terms of branches. So that's what I did. Another thing, I also updated my block ID packager to work for 8 branches as well as fixing this output because it was actually bugged, so it would not output anything. Okay, anyways, so we branch, and then it gives us the name, and then we copy the name onto a sign, and then we add our little numbers in front of it, and then we copy the sign name to the mob, and I've covered this before. All right, there you go. So as a developer, what are you gonna work on? So what you can do is you can change this text here, anything up here, and you can change the colors, bolds. Maybe you don't want the slash. Just look through it. I assume if you're a developer, you kind of know what you're doing with Telraw. You kind of know the format of Telraw. This Telraw element here is what puts the original name. Just leave it alone. These stuff here is a combination of just displaying scoreboards and displaying symbols. So that's really all developers would probably use this for. And they would also just use the tag. Anyways, that's pretty much it for this data pack, guys. If you thought that was useful, please leave a like. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. And let me know what you want to see next. If you have anything you need help on, leave a comment in the description. Leave something in the comments, or join the Discord, which is linked in the description as well. And you can ask your questions there, and people will answer it, or often I will answer it. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.